Morning, sir. I think there's some communication gap. I was told that 11:30 is the class. And when I came here, I heard that you're already waiting. For a change, it's a new kind of a wait. Instead of for somebody else, you wait for a teacher. As I told to some of you yesterday, we'll be introducing this and see what has to be the approach. And then continue with your, what was that? Symbolic anthropology in your next class. मैंने मूवी नहीं खोला, बताइए. I haven't explained all that. Let Levi Strauss wait for us for some time. We'll get back. नहीं थे क्लास में आप? You're not there? Okay. See, by now we have come across this name many times. My basic idea of this particular session is to prepare you psychologically to approach particular topics in the required way. And it is here that I would also want to deal with some of the myths people have. Also to communicate to most of you that it is more or less mathematics that you're doing by dealing with structures of DNA and dealing with the topics there. Sir, by now you understood that this particular discipline or branch rather of biological anthropology was a part of the fourfold classification as was given by Gause. So as we go through this a small discussion, we will try to approach various thinkers, some from the core physical anthropology subdiscipline and some who came as a combination of several things. But generally, if you look at any undergraduate course, the beginning is always made with a basic idea of, or what we call the general characteristics an anthropologist should be having. So in that perspective, a basic training is given in all the branches of anthropology to an undergraduate. And only when one goes to a master's, then they are given a facility of opting one. But let me say this to you, when it comes to biological anthropology, it cannot survive solely by itself. Why I am saying this is, if at all somebody is doing, say sociological anthropology, it can survive all by itself. It can survive all by itself, barring a few occasions where somebody might be needing an assistance of archaeology. But that is a smaller segment. So if at all any independent branch could be there in anthropology, that could be socio-cultural anthropology, because that dictates rest of these fields. And for that matter, even the fourth branch that we generally list out, such as linguistic anthropology, it can also not survive by itself because there is so much of cultural other aspects that it has to take into account. When it comes to archaeological anthropology and biological anthropology, they are so very closely intertwined with each other. For example, you look at archaeological anthropology, it's a combination of various things. What they dig out is a variety. They might be digging out certain tools, or they may be skeletal remains of certain individuals or certain species, where there is a requirement of both sociological and biological aspects, the knowledge of which an archaeologist should be having. keeping this in view, the so-called undergraduates of anthropology are given the basic information about all the 4 fields. When it comes to the syllabus that is mentioned for you in UPSC, we are trying to delineate it. In your chapter 1, that is what we have: human evolution, emergence of man, where there are certain theories being mentioned, starting with our own grandfather, Darwin's theories, and then before him what, after him what, newer variants of his own thoughts. Sometimes you are in love with him, you can't leave him, so there are certain things that you want to modify in what he must have said. Actually, 1.5, 1.6, we do them together. I did not mention archaeology and fossil evidences here, but that is also, fossil evidences is also for all practical purposes is incorporated in this particular thing, which is mentioned in 1.6. Biological basis, then a large part of chapter 9. 9.1, 2, and 3, we put that in basics of human genetics. Then if at all special mention has to be made, that is about study of chromosomes, race-related aspects, genetic markers. I mean, these are the major subheads that you must be knowing. Ecology, disease studies, growth studies, demography, and application. Once again, if I'm going back, we are starting with evolution. Most of this slide is dealing with evolution. This is a combination there, genetic elements in relation to the others. Then you have growth of human, demographic studies, applications. I would first want to start with a discussion about how physical anthropology had actually evolved, on what basis we categorize it into various subparts. Then we will pick up a couple of questions to have an idea of how to approach the questions. It had been a favorite question in UPSC, scope of new physical anthropology or scope of physical anthropology. This way of categorizing old and new has been our fashion in sociological anthropology also. Continuing with that, if we observe any basic reading can tell us that physical anthropology can also be categorized. I am not going into the thinkers who have done this kind of a classification. I am still taking time for that. Maybe in the next half an hour, we will be opening up those discussions also. This is a basic categorization. Physical anthropology into old and new. Old physical anthropology focusing at classification of people. Basis could be whatever. Physical measurements was a fashion. So we are going to see in today's class certain things about anthropometry. The newer variant wanted to find the reasons for the variation. And there was also an emphasis on, I am only giving one or two terms there regarding the nature of each of them. One was trying to categorize people, the second one did not believe in categorization. It wanted to study the reasons behind. So for example, if the first category was measuring people certain things which are really measurable, certain non-measurable also. Like, we are going to come across terms such as basically we are studying the morphology. Within morphology, there are certain physical characteristics that can be measurable, certain that cannot be measured, but you can distinguish people based on with the naked eye. For example, one very popular example that we give for morphoscopic characteristics is the skin color. The color of the skin is, of course, we have this popular scale of Fair and Lovely. Fair and Lovely gives you that fairness scale, 7 days within which you are going to get transformed from one color to the other. That's the scale that people give, but it is not really on a measurable side. But then there could be metric ones. People have interesting things to measure. Stature is only one. Right from the childhood, we have one of the first things that we must have measured about our own selves could be the height, and that is also one fanciful kind of a thing. Look at me. అయి మూలగా చూస్తున్నావు, ఎక్కడ మిస్ అయిపోతాము. One student had a complaint. Aap to, you always joke in Telugu only. But I think you can understand what I'm mentioning in Telugu. I have no regrets with that. People say that jokes are also important to understand the class. I do understand that. But then somehow your own heart lies somewhere. So actually with him, most of the doubts are also cleared in Telugu only. I think he's writing the exam in Telugu. Telugu rastunara ledhu kada. But anyways, when it comes to morphometric, there are several things that people were measuring. To begin with, it was stature, but then at an academic level, a serious inquiry started with the skull measurements or the head measurements. It is here that two words I want to introduce. One we call cranial index. The other is called cephalic index. Both might mean one and the same. But one we use for the living individuals, the other we use for the dead individuals. But measurement technique would be more or less the same. You are using the same kind of a calipers. So when Gause was starting to talk about race and racism, he was the one who in anthropology had for the first time used a measuring calipers to measure the head circumference, etc. See, it was not that earlier to Gause people were not measuring this particular thing. But the measurement was mostly for the medical purposes, to know the growth of the children, to scale the growth of the children. But then when he had taken this up, this was basically to compare different racial stocks, whether one is having more cranial capacity than the other. And that was also when people started the practice of measuring the IQ levels by various techniques. See, for any kind of technology to emerge, there would be a reason. There would be maybe a fantasy, there would be a sociological requirement for which one particular thing, you feel the necessity of it, and hence you are trying to devise one. So he was the one who started with measurement of the skulls or the heads for the purpose of comparing with different racial stocks. So I'll come back once again. Sir, this was the time when categorization was happening. There people were trying to identify the reason. This was the subfield where there was more of ethnocentrism in physical anthropology. There you are not following ethnocentrism, but you are trying to adapt. Adaptation is a big word there. Adaptation, we are not simply talking in terms of changing climates and how people are. Adaptation there was to prepare people for migration to an unknown land and how to get acclimatized to. Now, this is a basic scope of physical anthropology. Taking all those things into consideration, I tried to use the terms so that most of your syllabus can be accommodated there. If you see some other textbook, you might have a different kind of categorization of scope. But my idea here was only to bring to you different topics that are listed. I love always talking about evolution, being a person from anthropology, so I started with that. But each one of them have their own importance. To show that evolution is important, I'm only writing it as number 1 and me placing it at the top. But otherwise it is having the same importance. Evolution, variation, adaptation, disease studies, social service, criminology. There is a combination of things in social service and criminology.
Anthropological thought is still there.
I'm not shifting, sir. I thought I would begin with something so that, in the coming weeks, some basic bio lectures have to be there. I didn't want to introduce somebody to teach cell biology without talking about where we are. I thought that you would appreciate that we would be talking something different from what we were doing in the previous class. I'm so sorry for upsetting you. Can I go, sir? Don't mind. Today I got you. That's what is in your syllabus. From the evolution perspective, certain theories of evolution, paleontology, and primate studies. People always found it difficult to place where to place paleontology. Should we place in physical anthropology or should we place in archaeology? So even in biological anthropology, you can actually start studying from wherever you want. There's no restriction. There are 2 or 3 popular places from where one can start. Just because theories of evolution are mentioned in the beginning of your syllabus, some people tend to start with that. But I don't believe in doing so. I think it would be much better if one starts with 1.7. Knowing the very basic elements of the cell, which you must have forgotten after your class 10. So it would be like reintroducing what is the meaning of a cell and what are the constituents therein and what is the most deciding factor, where exactly the chromosome lies. Because I find it important to discuss in the beginning. Instead of one starting directly with chapter 9. Most of the people associate chapter 9 with physical anthropology and rest of the things with social anthropology. But then after having done something about what constitutes a cell and where exactly the chromosomes are, then it makes sense if I am starting with chromosomal aberrations. Because otherwise, when I say, I don't think all of you are of that kind, because many of us are already studying biology as a part of gen studies also. We would not be requiring a grand information much more than what you would be studying in your basic biology of general studies. If you are doing it there, there's no great thing that you are doing in the core biology part in anthropology. So what I find difficult with the students is, if at all I'm directly starting with, for example, a discussion about Down syndrome and what are the characteristics about it. When I say that there is a reason behind this particular syndrome coming up, such as if I'm using the words like there is somewhere a failure to disjunction when the cell division was occurring. The failure to disjunction is a big thing, that misses the student. So we want to explain the basic of cell division, though no question is generally asked from cell division. The mitotic and meiotic divisions, how exactly they take place, and what is the reason behind one kind of a complete chromosome being absent or parts of chromosome are disappearing, where are they going in the process? Now, these are the things we technically think that it is necessary. This is something like a mathematics that you are doing. You are not actually doing biology. You keep that in mind. So that is like everything is fine. If you think that I'm doing biology or something to do with human cell, you would start feeling awkward. I'm basically worried about the people from the non-life sciences background, if at all you have that kind of a thing in the back. Variation studies, human variation studies, these are the three things. We are going to have some discussion which is, though not obviously there in your syllabus, what is the meaning of being human? Is there a difference between human as a biological entity and human as a social entity? So something like, what is the difference between humanism? My father used to give this statement. I never understood when he said that. He used to say, it is difficult to teach humanity to humans. We can do it to non-humans. So the meaning of humanity there is something that we will have to explore. The context of biology and sociology we try to incorporate there. After having seen the syllabus, the division of it, then we will start with the emergence of biological anthropology. Adaptation studies, there are two topics in your syllabus, I think 9.8, 9.7 somewhere, ecological anthropology and nutritional anthropology. Though occasionally it looks funny, but we try to add a suffix to everything that we study, as if it's a big discipline in itself. Once you finish noting down the branches, we will have an idea of each of those branches, and these are the disease studies. I'm using the word medical anthropology, though it is not there in your syllabus. Your syllabus actually mentions it as in 9.8 as epidemiological anthropology, where there are certain terms such as infectious diseases, non-infectious diseases. You have the last one there, social service and crime. These four, one of them shall definitely be there in the exam every year. Forensics, defense studies, sports anthropology, and this one I personally love, paternity diagnosis. I am taking you back, and we are trying to identify the kind of, can I go? The kind of questions that you need to be preparing for the preparation for UPSC. One, I told you, scope of new physical anthropology or physical anthropology. Even if the question is simply the scope of physical anthropology, you shall be starting with the basic division and the characteristics of each of the branches. And within the branches that are mentioned, within the content that is mentioned, from that particular thing, that is theories of evolutionism, I am looking for one special question that was not asked so far. You may make a note there: relevance of Charles Darwin to anthropology. Relevance of Charles Darwin to anthropology. Because this man is considered to be the one that influenced people to launch altogether a new discipline. So far, whatever questions that were asked in the UPSC are, most of them are related to the Darwinian theories of biological evolution. That is only one segment wherein Darwin had influenced the people, but there is a whole lot of other things also. And sir, paleontological anthropology, that every year comes up in your exam, but we will be looking at it at a later point of time. How? Yeah, here. One particular topic is there, such as formation of races. Race formation, where less attention is paid by many students. People try to study races as divisions of humanity. Like, you have Caucasoids or Negroids, etc. It's a pretty easier one to remember, also the physical characteristics. But how races are formed, there are opinions, theories, etc. involved, and hence this is going to be the most important one. When it comes to blood group studies, I am trying to use this elsewhere to explain how the question has to be answered. Blood group studies in anthropology had actually started with an inquiry of knowing how people's behavior and people's inclinations to particular occupations, are they in a way linked to blood group studies. Sir, in today's time, we see that from India also there are certain organizations which are trying to map the spread of blood groups in the world in order to know the links with the people elsewhere. So it is like, maybe we must have originated from one particular place. The popular theory says that Africa must have been the place from where all the humans must have emerged and migrated. In order to prove the point, we are using blood group analysis, going into the details and subgroups there. I have already mentioned one particular thinker related to blood groups, I think in the previous class. I was talking about something called criminal tribes in the context of whom? Majumdar. Okay, come on here. Ecological anthropology is something where we would be looking at particular situations such as temperature conditions, nutritional conditions, that's a combination there, nutritional conditions, altitudes, and how different races and different pre-human individuals were prepared. I repeat what I said. In ecological anthropology or in adaptation studies, three situations are actually considered. One is altitudes, temperatures, nutritions. And for these three situations, how people from different racial stocks and different pre-human individuals were prepared. In most of these discussions, there has always been a comparison of Homo sapiens versus somebody called, there was one other mail I received yesterday. Use big font, I'm not able to see from there. I was saying that there have always been comparisons between Homo sapiens and Homo neanderthalensis, how they must have got used to, got adapted to different nutrition conditions and different ecological conditions. Sir, at every place that we are actually going through, at every place that we are writing, there are a few rules to be followed, but before that, let me do this. Forensics is one of the emerging fields in India, because when compared to elsewhere in the world, we still are in an incipient condition. Nevertheless, there are certain questions that I would be preparing for you. One will be forensics in India, forensic laws in India. Forensic laws in India, and the status of forensic anthropology in India. Status of forensic anthropology in India. When I say status of forensic anthropology, I am actually talking about our technical status, technological status, to what extent we have been using researchers for which type of problem solving. So we will be going through several cases, at least about 6-7 cases. We will see what kind of forensic information was actually used in solving those criminal cases, popular ones, of course. Many times what happens is we know the names of the cases, what exactly happened inside, how the case was finally solved. This kind of detailing neither the newspaper is interested in, nor because they are not writing UPSC. When it comes to defense, I thought I would share one. What's happening? Don't worry about what is being hung there. Throughout anthropometry, this is what will be the effort, to recognize that people are different. It's only a very small, obvious difference we are speaking about. We would be going into the details of various other things so that you provide a level playing field to the people. When it comes to defense, good lot of pictures we will be sharing in the later lectures, where we see how our defense forces, anybody who were associated with the defense earlier, we might be needing your help somewhere. We would be looking at how prepared our defense forces are when compared to the others. A popular comparison we are going to make will be maybe the American Defense Forces and the Indian Defense Forces. What is the kind of importance that you are giving to our own lives? Like, what is the difference in different kind of tools that we would be using to safeguarding our own selves? It is here that it's not a true biology that you are actually doing. We are going to see certain physiological things, no doubt. In measurements where exactly, in capabilities where exactly you are differing, based on which how you are actually manufacturing things to safeguard your own people. Thankfully, even in Hyderabad, we have this organization, DRDO, and we have good number of students from there. Some of them, who made it to service. Some of them, unfortunately, could not. The scientists are there. I was actually requesting one of them to come and talk to you, not in a lecture mode, of course, to share their researches with you, so that you would understand in what places anthropometry is actually used in weapons manufacturing, and in various other defense applications. So the ones who are actually working in the rocket wing, and particularly some of them who are associated with manufacturing of the dresses for the Air Force people, kind of things. So they are going to share with us the kind of original researches that we are associated with. So don't think that when we say defense anthropology, it is something to do with biological warfare alone. Of course, that's also one of the topics. Let me take you here. I was trying to look at it from 4 or 5 major stages. Our inquiry is how the content is changing from time to time, along with research methodology. Don't worry about writing the whole thing. I highlighted certain things for your convenience. Even in the worst of our dreams, we can't forget Mr. Darwin. Everything that we wove to anthropology today, we actually got it from him. We have in anthropology, we got it from him. The basic idea of definition of anthropology as a study of humans from the biological perspective, from the evolutionary perspective, comes from him. So it starts with that theoretical premise. Due to that theoretical premise, there are certain developments which we call eugenic movement, which is seen as a synonym of Darwinian theories, where he was trying to improve the future races. He was trying to make the future races fit by removing certain negative characteristics. Sir, I am using very carefully the language so that I am not actually using any technical words there. What we are removing, what we are trying to strengthen, once we start talking about the true biological terms, we would be replacing them there. But here the idea was that there are certain characteristics, maybe very much visible physical characteristics, or certain traits that are hidden in the so-called DNA of the individuals. Those characteristics which may be positive, which may be negative, first you identify what are positive characteristics and what are negative. His idea is the positive ones have to continue, negative ones have to be removed. How you remove this is altogether, again, another discussion that we are going to have. So the basic idea of eugenic movement is to strengthen the so-called positive ones. In the beginning, without much of a knowledge of the cell biology, people started to have some kind of preconceived notions. See, these are the characteristics that are considered to be positive. And identify those positive characteristics in certain people, they are considered to be the ones that are superior. So from there started this inquiry, how to know that these are positive characteristics, to what level we will have to go to repair or remove or strengthen those characteristics. That's where had come the science of anthropometry, or the science of studying the microbiological things in the human. Then of course the things have come. One other argument which emerged from the other day, a student was asking this, when we believe that we came from the apes. Sir, gone are the days when we used to believe that we came from the apes. We don't believe that we came from the apes. We don't believe that we came from chimpanzee. But right now our belief is that maybe the apes and the humans were having a common ancestor. If at all you are saying that we are the successors of chimpanzees and apes, I think we are talking about a time maybe 30, 40 years ago. I want to share certain pictures with you. regarding this particular thing. Let me finish off with this. When I come to these two, they are talking about the new physical anthropology where the existing notions were challenged. The one very fundamental thing that was challenged was the movement of race, which was coterminous with the eugenic movement, which was similar to or equal to the Darwinian theories. So it was like, the first half of the discipline, first phase of the discipline was an effort to create a drift in the society, drift among the humans at large. And the later part of physical anthropology was trying to bridge the gap or remove those kind of notions and prejudices of dividing the humans. So it may be through racism-related topics that you were trying to popularize and trying to fight them. And of course, the later part is something like more of a utility-based one. So at one point of time, people felt that enough is enough with this kind of a discussion of supremacy or whatever, fighting supremacy, supporting supremacy kind of things. More application-wise, application-based things such as those, defense or medicine or forensics, etc. This started accumulating. So right now, if at all a sensible question has to be asked, it will be more on applications of physical anthropology in contemporary times. Sir, for all these branches, including physical anthropology, we should also be looking at Indian variant. Fortunately or unfortunately, on the sociological side, we ourselves were the subject matter. So we were having so much of opportunity to offer things to the rest of the world. But when it comes to the technological side, we had to fight certain weaknesses in the sense that we had to build our information base. I said that I'll have to share certain things with you. I did not expect that you would be writing the whole slide. Otherwise, I would have dictated. I thought you would read and simply write down the highlighted ones. Slide kanabadite raayadam modaledite kashtam. Inscriptions. Before I go to describe things about, just have a look at this. This is a very beautiful document. This you don't write. I'll share this with you later. There are several newsletters of this kind. This is by DRDO. They were trying to because previously, prior to these newsletters, when I was trying to get information from the scientists there, I always used to get this word that this is a classified information. Then we were pursuing them that, okay, fine, classified information, you can keep it as such, but rest of the information you can share with people so that people in general can have a confidence that, okay, we are also working. In fact, what is classified for Indian population, people from the rest of the world, they already know. So you will be going through these documents to see what DRDO has been doing in order to strengthen our performance in the field. So high altitude adaptation, what kind of experiments people are doing. This is a regular newsletter. Okay, this is one. You're not anyway reading it. Somehow those pictures got missed out. This is that man who had started with the five-fold classification, five-fold description, but let me start with him. Washburn. Particularly categorizing time-wise. So when I was giving a superficial classification there, you can add those names. This is that man who gives a timeline also, and this timeline is specific to the European physical anthropology, post and pre-1951. This he calls descriptive anthropology, that is descriptive stage of physical anthropology, that is mathematical stage of physical anthropology, where you are trying to have several statistical data so that you are trying to discuss things like the commonalities between the genetic stocks. When it comes to the descriptive stage, can I go? We are only trying to add the numbers and names to the previous chart that you have drawn. Descriptive study of biological parameters and then using mathematical models to bridge the gap between different racial stocks. I thought I would introduce the first evolutionary pictures in today's class after having mentioned him. This is a descriptive stage where people were focusing on certain things, such as studying the teeth, studying the bone, and studying human growth, the variations, etc., etc. In the meantime, did you finish writing? No. I wanted to introduce the very first discussions of human evolution. So there are so many segments out there, as I said. One is paleontology. The other is basic cell biology. The other aspects are several other applied things, including something like, a whole lot of chromosomal aberrations that we are. Can I remove this? The basic idea of today's class is to deal with the myth. I was saying the several myths I wanted to talk about. One of the myths was this: where exactly we came from. It's like this. Sometimes we first come with an idea and we would want to prove it. It's as simple as somebody some time back had a dream that he was landing on the moon. So when somebody said that I might land on the moon or I would want to land on the moon, he would definitely look crazy. Until those 1960s when somebody actually physically had put the feet on the moon. Or if somebody today says that maybe I would go for having a ladder from the earth to the moon, he might look equally crazy. Until one day would come when you would have a foldable ladder whenever you want to. Maybe you are putting the ladder up there and then you are trying to. So in technologies, the things that might look to be foolish may be equally futuristic. This is in terms of trying to come up with innovations. In this particular context of trying to trace the evolution of humans, many times what happens is people come with some kind of hypothesis. They must have believed that humans have come from some kind of an ancestor whom we are sharing with certain non-human individuals also. I am actually trying to give you the pictures starting from the nearest fellow to us, nearest ancestor to the humans, to going to the far-off fellows. And in doing so, I am also trying to put across to you. See, the reason why I'm introducing all these pictures is I will be sharing certain video URLs with you so that back home you can watch and try to have some kind of a fair idea before we are going to discuss about human past. Past is always intriguing. It always tries to give some kind of encouragement to us, enthusiasm to see. It is always a puzzle to read about the past. And all the more so if you do not have written records. It's actually a test to your storytelling ability. Proof is a different thing. I was saying that there are a few myths. One is whether we are sharing an ancestry, we are having an ancestry with chimpanzees. I'll come to that picture also later. Here. This is a more or less accepted picture. You can see these very names in your syllabus document. Starting with that fellow Australo to Homo erectus to somebody called Neanderthal, somebody called early Homo sapiens, and the modern man. Sometimes we might feel that there's nothing important in the name. But many times the nomenclature itself gives us so much of information. Sir, I am also trying to introduce these terms to you so that you get familiar. If at all we come from the disciplines other than life sciences, we start to look at them with a lot of love and affection. Of course, in today's class, I am not going to physically introduce them to you, like giving their pictures and how they look different from the humans. That class we will be scheduling for your, after about a week's time when I'm going to finish your anthropological thought. The first thing I'm putting to you will be human evolution. That will be paleontology. I know that you have been put to a lot of ordeal in the last 10-15 days of time. I wish I could reduce the ordeal on you, but I don't think I'll be able to do that. because I have decided to do with archaeology and fossils for you. So it's like I would do archaeology, then I would continue with fossil evidences. So throughout the journey, currently what we are doing is trying to think the way thinkers must have thought. Later we are going to study culture and evolution from the non-speaking things, the stones and bones and other kinds of material evidences that you dig up. After having done these two, because I know that these are the two tough things and toughest things in the syllabus, once you are done with this, then I would want to totally give you a relaxation and start talking about things such as caste and Indian society. So it will be like, putting you in a pressure cooker for some time and then giving you a proper air, breathing space there. And then, of course, other things will come. After that, once again, you will be kind of. So that is the kind of plan that we have. So one myth that we are trying to deal with here is whether this line is so very simple. That is the inquiry in your paleontology. Having considered this as more or less the sequence that we are following, of course, there are so many other branches that we are going to deal with, so many questions that we are going to deal with. A student was asking the other day, is it having any significance in our administration, in the jobs in administration, if at all we read something of this kind? I don't know. I really don't know. We do these things in the class primarily because they are there in your syllabus. If at all that was the question you are asking, you should be asking UPSC, not me. That whether it is of any use in administration. What I am looking at is how scoring the topics are. If at all they are scoring, we should have to give it more attention and time. Coming out there, I have written some XYZ fellow. I'll be substituting that soon. This is the next scheme that we will have to look at. One of the earliest evolutionary pictures anthropologists have drawn. One of the earliest evolutionary pictures anthropologists have drawn. I am trying to introduce one small new word for you. There was somebody by name Pithecanthropus is ape-like. Pithecanthropus is ape-like. Somebody who was looking like an ape, who was called a Dryo. So all the set of other new names out there. Now we will be coming to a close with names like whites and browns and blacks. These are the other set of names that we are going to have. There came a belief where people thought that there was somebody called a Dryo who was our ancestor. It's not an imaginary fellow, we have evidences also. Who was evolving, and then over a period of time, the two lines of evolution had come. One line took to all those ape fellows, the other line took to Australo, from there humans have originated. Later, based on, it happens like this. With more and more fossil evidences, we try to expand, we try to diversify the pictures. It's something like this. Later, one other picture had come. people believed that, okay, this man, this particular fellow was our ancestor. But not all of them decided one fine day that we will depart and evolve as something else. Maybe some fellows started evolving in a different direction, few fellows continued, and then at what point of time this particular diversion from human evolutionary line had happened, that's a big puzzle still to be established. People are mostly interested in this particular individual, chimpanzee, at what point of time this division had happened, whether these two lines are coinciding, that's also a big question. So if somebody says today that chimps and humans are sharing the same evolutionary line, that also, I tried to put a gap there, that also is to be established. Meaning that we have come off time when people believed that we came from the apes. That is gone. Second stage was a belief that apes and humans shared the common evolutionary line. And now, in the 2000s, we are now going into a question, is it really true that chimpanzee and humans shared the common evolutionary line? Are you following? So these are all something like a hypothesis. People come up with a question, try to gather evidences. I have given in one of the classes the story of this man called Dawson. I was making a mention of his effort. He was trying to gather evidence to show that even UK had produced pre-human individuals. You remember that story? So many times what happens is you have some kind of notion, you establish some kind of a hypothesis, you do everything possible. And occasionally what might happen is when you are digging, you find something, from that you try to give a story. You don't have a preconceived, pre-thought of story, but then because you have got some evidence, from the evidence you are trying to build a story. Some of the categories are of that type. But right now this is the inquiry. And I have changed that sequence up there. Here and here, people were having erectus, and after that you have Neanderthal, and then there is the Homo sapiens. And later there came a question on the Homo neanderthalensis being our ancestor or not. When a picture finally gets accommodated in a book, that will be based on considerable backing by the scientific community. A large number of paleontologists today believe that Neanderthal must not have been, may not have been our ancestor. Of course, there is a division of opinion there, but a majority of the people question Neanderthal being our ancestor. Why they said this, that is going to be the inquiry that we are going to do in the future classes. These three pictures are the very basic ones. But when we go into the details there, when we go to study about astrology, we are going to see a huge number of subspecies there. And we will see the struggle, we will enjoy the struggle of anthropologists to confirm which of those Australopithecus is our nearest ancestor. And I think that is where we are going to have not simply the names, but pictures and the thinkers who were relentlessly fighting to show that their fossil was nearer to the humans. Thankfully, right now, you can see in 1.8 paper 1, you have this topic of dating methods. We have now the possibility of knowing the age of the fossil. And right now, we are also able to more accurately date the fossils because it is found with Homo neanderthalensis. Some of the fossils they found there are DNA fragments found, which is more than a luck for anthropologists. Otherwise, it would have been a story that you try to confirm with some kind of a dating method. But if at all you have DNA fragments, it is with much more accuracy you are able to date not simply the fossil, but you are able to now compare the DNA of Homo neanderthalensis with Homo sapiens. So we are able to now come to a better conclusion about our ancestry, our relation with that particular species. So right now, many of the anthropologists are not really struck with chimpanzee and humans. That age is gone. We have new issues to settle now. The current issue is Neanderthal fellow. And if you look at your syllabus document 1.6, there are several other variants that are also mentioned towards the end of that topic. Within Homo sapiens, there are several variants that are mentioned. Now, there is one other discussion that is going on, that is whether these variants mentioned there, such as the Grimaldi man, Chanceled man, etc., whether these variants are the precursors of the human races. It's like somebody must have given rise to maybe Caucasoid race, somebody had given rise to Mongoloid race. Is that kind of thing valid? That is the other inquiry that we are doing. To sum up, I'll tell you. In paleontology, one of the strong branches of physical anthropology for your syllabus, we will be going through the evolutionary pictures. One, whether Astrolo is our ancestor. If he is our ancestor, within Astrolo, which individual is the nearest one to us? We are going to have huge pictures to draw, huge flow charts to draw, to show which of the Astrolo fellow. I think those will fill the entire page for you. One page taking you to who is the nearest and far off Astrolo fellow. This is one inquiry we'll make. And in the genus Homo, which are the individuals that are our ancestors? Whether Neanderthal was our ancestor or not, this is one contemporary argument that is going on. Third is, among the Homo sapiens, early Homo sapiens, the titles that are given to you in the syllabus, whether they have given rise to particular races. This is one story. There is the other one to settle with. That is it true that the ancestors of Homo sapiens have originated from Africa? Out of Africa theory, as we call. Because at the time period when people say that man had, the ancestor of man had left Africa, by that time, if you see evidence of some ancestor of man in the other places of the world, it's a challenge to out of Africa theory. I hope you're following what I'm saying. Because thankfully so far, most of the questions in the UPSC have been very direct. But I want you to also be prepared for discussion-oriented questions. God forbid if a question such as justify or discuss out of Africa theory with required evidences. You should be in a position to give both the views there. The people who are supporting out of Africa theory and the ones who say that, see, when African man was emerging and coming out of Africa, already pre-humans were existing in Australia or maybe in Java. So if you are having that kind of an evidence, what is it that you are going to say? There are some people who say that they were also part of Africa. Java was a part of Africa in the process of continental drift. And when that was a part, maybe certain pre-human individuals that were existing on that particular place must have continued there. See, if at all you want to justify, adedo annattu taa pattina kundeliki mude kaalani, if at all you decided to show that whatever you are mentioning in the hypothesis is true, you are hell-bent to do whatever. The people who tried to do that. So that is the other inquiry. And I have written few other names, Sivapithecus, Dryopithecus. If you look at your chapter 1, paper 2, in chapter 1, paper 2, these names are there. Titles such as Ramapithecus and Sivapithecus. There is also somebody called Narmada man. So that's where Indian variants are coming. India is also one struggling place in paleontology, a struggling place in paleontology, because we hardly have any evidences to shout to the world that, see, we also had human evolutionary past. In the entire Indian subcontinent, we have about 3 fossils or 3.5 fossils to prove that we also have some kind of, that's a face-saving thing. Narmada man is a boom for us. If at all you see the complete title, we call it Homo erectus narmadensis. So it is, when I say Narmada man, we are talking about Homo erectus variant that was existing in India. We have another fossil called Sivapithecus, so it is long time back. This fellow, one fossil, or Ramapithecus, one other fossil. Initially people said that these are 2 different fossils altogether. Later they found that no, one is the female, the other is the male of the same species. So we have evidence of one ancestor only. So Sivapithecus, one fellow, Homo erectus, one fossil, and Homo sapiens, 1 or 2 fossils there. This is the story of human evolution in Indian subcontinent. When compared to places like Africa, you want to pass time, you take a crowbar and start digging. Wherever you are sitting, you get a fossil. Indians blame it on the nature of soil in India. We say that, no, people who must have studied geology, you must be having a fairer idea. The acidic nature of Indian soils. That's where one very significant topic we will be preparing for your batch, that is the factors that were responsible for fossilization. 2 questions, sir. One is factors responsible for race formation, miscegenation as it is called. Miscegenation is multiplication or origin of races, formation of races, generation of races, miscegenation. Miscegenation is formation of races. What are the factors responsible for formation of races? Second one is, what are the factors responsible for fossilization? You are actually more or less doing physics and chemistry there. You're not doing biology in fossilization. So I will have to from time to time convince you, make you happy that you're not studying biology. That's a Herculean task for me. Because having a discussion about chromosomes and saying that no, you're not studying biology, it's going to be a big difficult task for me. But then I'm hell-bent on doing that. So my hypothesis is you're not studying biology. So I will have to prove with evidences that you're not studying. Those are the 2 vital things. Now let me introduce you to a few thinkers. By the way, can you make out between these 3 fellows? Orangutan, chimpanzee and gorilla? Can you make out between them? What color is orangutan in? Oh, great. Huh? Reddish brown. Okay. Who is the heaviest fellow among, I'm giving the names. Who is the heaviest fellow among the gorilla, chimpanzee, orangutan, and bonobo? What's the other name of bonobo? I repeat. Somebody who has come from life sciences here, bonobo, what's the other name? अब एक दूसरों को देखकर तुम बताओ मैं करना पहले आप में जी सर baboon. No, not baboon. I'll be showing you pictures anyways. I told you 4. I'm asking about the biggest one. So at least the rest of the ones you know. So bonobo, there is a small doubt, so you can keep that aside. And who of them, no, I'm not asking the smallest fellow. Who of them is having the relatively higher ability of walking on the 2 feet? Why that answer? Did you see or have you heard that he is more nearer to the humans? YouTuber. We will be continuing with those discussions with the pictures and then the social life of these people also. Studying the social life of humans itself is a big thing. We are going to study the social life of not simply the pre-human Homo individuals, but certain people whom we think that they are far-off cousins of us. You had some question? Okay. You don't want to ask? Thank you. Now, these are some random thinkers. When we shift from archaeology and fossils, we are going to study majorly about B.S. Guha. But I want to mention him today here because he was one of the earliest physical anthropologists in India. He was one of the earliest physical anthropologists in India, a specialist in physical anthropology. I don't place D.N. Majumdar there because D.N. Majumdar was there everywhere in parts. I, in fact, wanted to parallelly discuss certain issues, very personal issues, not my personal issues, Guha's personal issues. In fact, these biographical articles, autobiographical articles are very interesting to know why a particular person was working with one organization or one particular other individual and not with others. Behind the discipline, there are so many politics. Understanding that politics will help us to write the answers better. See, generally, it's a human nature to have more inquisitiveness about the personal aspects of the other people. If there is some kind of a noise coming from your neighbor's house, you leave everything and with ears glued to your wall. I think that is one of the personality traits I personally have. I extend it to anthropology also. What is happening in the personal lives of the thinkers? Now, Srinivas writes at one place. Srinivas was a trained person under R.C. Brown. R.C. Brown was training him. I told you that story. Brown said that you unnecessarily don't trouble yourself. Go back to your house. Your house is in the laboratory. Your house is a laboratory. Your village is a laboratory. You go report from your own laboratory. But when somebody comes home from a foreign land, having studied there, having worked there, once you are back, you are clueless whom to approach. Like wahi Swadesh ka story hai. You want people to come back. After they come back, where to place them? What is the opportunity that you are going to give to them? Nobody knows. So just because Brown had said he comes home, he starts applying to various organizations that were existing, universities for teaching positions. At that time, Anthropological Society of India was led by this man, B.S. Guha. Srinivas wanted to work there. He went on applying. Those were the times you are not having internet. You write to them, you wait for the answer, months together. No reply comes from there. And finally he comes to know that Guha has hardly any interest in social anthropology. Whomever was applying from physical anthropology side, they were given opportunities. So it's like whatever is your parent discipline, you would want to strengthen that particular discipline. So whatever researches in physical anthropology that were happening in the early days in India, we can count them on B.S. Guha. Srinivas had another problem with Guha, or Guha had a problem with Srinivas, I don't know what. This difference in the outlook is, Srinivas was trying to write things so that he can bridge the gap between different social strata. His writings were to bridge the gap between different strata. On the other hand, Guha's work was in a way trying to strengthen the divisions in the society. So you have a basic difference in what is your final aim. And Guha is an authority on races. We are going to see in those classes 3 people particularly. One will be, I'll read out certain questions for you. I'm reading out certain questions for you. Chapter 2. There was this popular question, 2014, contribution of Risley to the Aryan debate. Those were the debates in the last couple of paper cuttings we had seen. I repeat the question, contribution of Risley to the Aryan debate. That was 2014 question. I'm trying to look for the names of these thinkers there. Earlier there was one more, discuss the relevance of Guha's racial classification in the context of India's ethnic groups. Whatever may be the question, Guha's name is there. That is sufficient for me. And then there was yet another question. Is Risley's racial classification of Indian population valid? Critically discussed with the help of suitable examples. So Risley was there. 1 year prior to that, this is very much interesting. Describe ethnic elements in Indian population focusing either on Risley's or on Guha's classification. See, UPSC is so generous. Within a question, he is giving you a further choice. You need not have to worry that I studied only one of the classifications, the other I missed. So generous the paper setter was, asking you to describe either Risley's or Guha's classification. So, if you look at this particular chapter, I am reading questions from chapter 2 of paper 2, where you find questions directly from Risley or Guha, even if they are giving subsidiary questions there. I am reading out one. Last year's question, 2016. Give a critical assessment of Negrito problem in India. If at all you hadn't done these things in the class, in the exam you will realize that there is some problem like a Negrito problem. And it's an Indian problem. You know, people come out with such puzzle on their face. Maybe India is having a new problem now called Negrito. So you try to look at the current affairs. You don't find Negrito in the current affairs. Actually, this was a discussion from Guha. So these are the 2 people, sir. Tens of, I think about 12 various racial classifications are there, popularly studied, if at all you are doing anthropology in your masters. Thankfully, when we do in UPSC, we deal with Risley, we do with Guha, there is some other person called Sarkar, there is one other fellow called Hudden. These are the 4 fellows we are going to study, nothing more than that. See, why I am mentioning them is, when the syllabus is unclear in certain places in the document, we will have to create our own curriculum. These are the 4 fellows. Risley and Guha, you cannot do without them. Risley was the first fellow to give the racial classification. After that, several other fellows had come. Then Guha comes. Guha is considered to be the one who had given extensive details. I was telling you, Guha was the full-fledged first physical anthropologist in India. Guha was an Indian, sir. That's an Indian name. You might be wondering whether he's an Indian. they have a tradition of working with culture. His uncle was a sociologist. His son was an anthropologist. His brother was also an anthropologist. So it's like anthropology running in the blood. Gause was actually census commissioner, 1931. So Rajgarki talchukunte debbala kadaventani. I don't know in Hindi the translation. When he was having all the necessary tools in his hand, Guha, as a census commissioner, you have the complete information about every individual fellow there. Though those census were not so very exhaustive census. But he was in a position to approach people in large numbers. When he was taking data, your name, your father's name, your occupation, how much of land you have, etc., etc. Along with that, what is the height, what is your blood group, and let me check your other features also. I already have my tape, let me measure you. This is easy. Whatever biometric census that we are talking about now, after 2011, he had already done that. Maybe number of people whom he must have measured was relatively less. But then this was a kind of person who gave the first account of whoever is sleeping. The first account of, let me say this one story. I am stopping my sentence midway through. I love telling this story to my students. It is especially for those who are having their Saturday nap in the class. When my father was working with ITDA, there were certain extension programs being conducted, agricultural extension programs. So whatever technologies is the technology transfer kind of things. So the farmers and the tribal fellows, they are not actually used to sitting and listening to lectures like this. So huge shamianas, and then somebody is lecturing and you're listening. Most often they are not you. Lambe ho jaoge. So he used to have this one practice. He would ask his assistants to hang balloons here and there to the shamianas. I used to think that they are decorating the shamianas. So when somebody is sleeping, he would tell, go and prick the balloon. And you get up from your sleep. Maybe I should ask Rambabu sir to make arrangement of balloons and somebody to be put in the class so that whoever is sleeping, prick karo. I stopped my statement midway through. I was talking about V.S. Guha. He had given the first major account of Indian population based on the physical features. That is the first one. There are the other people, Majumdar, you know him. He was there not simply as a physical anthropologist who was studying the blood groups, he was also there with the census. He was giving the statistical data, and he was trying to categorize the statistical data that people have collected in the census. So he was associated with the 3 census operations continuously. I don't know whether we were measured thrice in the census so far. Did we? Were we enumerated 3 times so far? So I'm trying to know your age now. How many of you have crossed 30? He was the one who was there with the 3 continuous census operations, successive operations. And Bo was, you know him so very well. So many activities related to physical anthropology. Sir, it's like this. Whenever we are, and I have to talk about him, Balgir is a surviving anthropologist, as you can see the name. He is the founder of a first online physical anthropology journal in India. You can browse through, you can see what are the articles they are publishing. First online physical anthropology journal I think 2006, somewhere they have started. They are in need of readership, so please do the needful. Of course, their focus area is studying occurrence of particular diseases in the country. This is also going to be our topics of discussion. Like, if a question comes, write an essay on the health situation of tribals in India or particular regions of India. Their work comes handy for us. They are giving so many details there, caste-wise, region-wise, and tribe-wise details. So I think the journal can be of great help to you. Now, sir, let me look at the questions and how you answer them, some of them. I think the color choice was wrong. Sir, any question from physical anthropology, for that matter, those are the two things that you will have to accommodate. One is the sociological dimension. The second one is anthropometric or the biological dimension there. I have written anthropometric because most of the applied physical anthropology topics that are mentioned in your syllabus, they have to do with anthropometry. So let us see, I was looking for two special lectures, one from a practicing linguistic anthropologist, and the other one is from a scientist here. If at all they can give us some kind of additional inputs. Because I also wanted to communicate to the group here that we are studying a discipline that is functional. It's not that only disciplines like administration or geography or economics, they alone are functional. Anthropology is a non-functional discipline where we are studying people who are non-existing. It's not that way. So I'll deal with some of the questions here. Maybe something like this. The moment you see this question, if at all you are from life sciences background, you have a very pleasant, more than a smile on your face. ఒక పెద్ద వికటాట్టహాసం ఇచ్చి నాకంటేనా అని you would start writing reams of information. Three things have to be written under that. Of course, we haven't introduced somebody called DNA to you so far. But presuming that you know him, we are looking at this particular word. Most of the times, this word is associated with catastrophe or something like a sudden change that occurs in the genetic matter. I am using this term to bring to you a basic structure of any question from this part of the syllabus. So you would actually start with the very basic idea, basic definition of the term, saying that maybe this is a sporadic change that might occur in so-and-so thing. And whenever we are bringing up topics like this, we will have to deal with the popular perceptions. Because you are not a biological expert who is giving the whole lot of technical things there. You also have to deal with the popular perceptions. What actually people think in general, the non-technical fellows, what is the idea that they must be having about it? And what is the technical thing that you want to give? So that you are dealing with the kind of misunderstanding people might be having. What I'm trying to mention in this particular context is the popular misconception or perception people might be having about mutation is they associate most often the negative developments with the term mutation. When we use the word mutant, it is mostly seen as a negative variant. And that's where the job of an expert in the life sciences must be, that you communicate to the people that it is not everything negative. There are positive mutants also. And second thing is, what could be the reason? When I say that mutagenesis, what are the reasons for the emergence of the mutants? There may be several external factors, maybe extreme chemical exposure or extreme temperature exposure, things like that. You would try to identify what are the reasons. Because you are finally looking at, when I'm saying especially the term mutation, when I'm looking at what is the chemical change that is occurring in that genetic matter. For a chemical change to occur, there could be several factors. Sir, I'm trying to present this in a very non-biological manner. I'm trying to present it in a very non-biological manner. Later, when you're properly writing down, I would be introducing the technical terms. Basically, I'm looking at a phenomena that a common mind can absorb. So I was saying this, that when I'm using the term mutation, I will have to look at what could be the factors that are giving rise to. So we will see the locations also. The locations also, where exactly, if at all this particular change occurs, where exactly if the change occurs, is it that, in the sex chromosomes or in the maybe somatotypic kind of a change that occurs? When a change occurs in the non-sex chromosomes or autosomes, whether that will be carried on to the future generations, or which is more dangerous? Is it possible that whatever mutation has occurred, can that be reversed in any manner? Is there an automatic reversal of it? Or if it is a permanent kind of a change that is occurring, is it going to the next generation? How dangerous it could be? Or maybe it is not so very dangerous one. Meaning that we are going to look at the intensity of it. Going back, whenever the terms from the core biology occur, you start by the basic definition. And this is a process we are talking about. We are going to see several such processes. For example, there is a term such as genetic drift. That is also a process. After having defined, we will see what could be the reasons behind that particular phenomena to emerge. And the intensity of it, the location of it, what could be the effect of it. And basically, examiner is trying to look at, in your answer, what is the need to study that particular thing in question. And finally, for us, what? Most of the answers will be missing on that. Many people give pictures also. See, this is what is happening. That's where our very emphasis will be. Which are the contemporary studies related to the topic? For example, the one I was talking about, Gause, he had a special focus on the topic of mutation. When he was writing in 1930s, mutation was seen as a mechanism that was bringing changes in races. But at that time, the understanding was incomplete. Currently, we have information. In the post-1960s, whole lot of studies on DNA. They have given a strength to us. Now we can use them in various fields. I'm only giving 2 names. There are several others. So when you formally sit and write an answer, we will try to identify at which places we would be needing, we would be giving the examples. So when we say that in the genealogy writings, we are going to see, suppose Rivers was doing this genealogy writing, or Bowers was writing genealogy in the Eskimos. That's where he mentions, suddenly he sees that in a particular generation, people start noticing one particular kind of ailment appearing for the first time, meaning that in the previous generations it was not there. So Bowers starts to hint at this. Maybe certain changes have come, or people were exposed to certain situations because of which a mutation must have occurred, and this particular ailment started appearing in that population. That was one of the other things that he was examining in geographical determinism and ecological determinism. He was hinting there that there was a huge change in the climatic conditions to which they were getting exposed. And with the radiation effect, he was sure that something must have gone wrong with the chemical element of DNA, and things started to appear which they were not there earlier. See, at the time when Bowers was writing, not much of a technical information was existing with him. Without having the technical background, without having the technical information, he was hinting at it. And this very region in the later part of time, in 1990s, there is one physical anthropologist by name Skupin. One of the textbooks that we will be referring to in our classes will be Skupin. He had done his fieldwork, physical anthropological fieldwork. He had taken samples of DNA from the people and tried to find out the age of those DNA fragments. And there he was trying to confirm that at a particular time in the evolution, in the history of Eskimos, a genetic change must have occurred at these particular points. This is something that is a continuation of Bowers' work. And then, of course, in forensic anthropology also, we will be in a big way. Yeah, I was talking about this article, which you can back home see, Birth of the Internet Journal of Biological Anthropology. Birth of Internet Journal of Biological Anthropology. You have good number of fields that are mentioned there, which they are working with. Let me take you to the other questions. Sir, yeah. This is one other area of interest of UPSC. I am trying to pick up those topics where people from life sciences would think that they have a clear advantage. This is one question with which people right from Majumdar were suffering. Not that he was having the problem. They were actually finding it difficult to get the required information from the respondents. When we are talking about Majumdar, this is the time of 1940s. See, forget about 1940s even today. In relatively a conservative society of India, it is difficult for any anthropologist to go seek information from people. You cannot directly approach a lady and say that, can you talk about your menarche and menopause? You will not be left in one piece. Even if you give all those disclaimers that, see, I am so and so and I am doing this work for so and so reasons. That is the reason why Majumdar had started using his wife as a subsidiary anthropologist. He understood the need of female in the data collection, practically. So Veena Majumdar also became an anthropologist. most of our work was in physical anthropology. Last year's question was on Leela Dubey. This year you can expect a question on Veena Majumdar. Because UPSC has to give at least one question on female anthropologists. In a day or two, I will be sending you a beautiful list of female anthropologists with their photographs and their popular work. I have chosen about 10 people who can be called primatologists. These were the female anthropologists who worked with different primates, like chimpanzees, etc., the kind of technology they are teaching them. And I am intentionally adding one lady towards the end of the entire list. It is to show that not everything is happy in the field. There was one female anthropologist who was killed brutally because she started fighting for the case of certain primates, protection of the primate areas there. It's not simply that you love to live in the forest among these primates. It's not simply that. It's not simply the affection thing or the fieldwork thing there. Sometimes when you end up into a serious effort, then there are consequences. Because there are grand old people. You must have seen one particular lady who had worked with chimpanzees her lifetime. Jane Goodall. So in the next class, that is on Monday, before you start writing about, Tuesday, I'm so sorry. Yeah, what happened? Generally, usage. So, whatever. In the next class, before I talk about Levi-Strauss, we would be seeing some of the pictures of these very beautiful ladies. I am sure you would be interested in primates after seeing them. Today, if you find time, you can browse about her, an authority on chimpanzees. She started very young in age, and her association with those little fellows, it is still continuing. Now, I'll have to control my instinct to stop to talk about them, because I love to talk about those ladies, so that I can talk about this. A question of this kind appears. Many times UPSC simply picks up words. Menarche, menopause for 15 marks or 20 marks. What is it that you will have to write? Mind it is not to be filled with all those biological discussions there, all hormonal things there. That is not the expectation. Which hormones are working in what quantity, what kind of things. You would anyway be defining the meaning of them, followed by the significance of them, because the time period between menarche and menopause is very, very important, because that is the time when the female is contributing to, female is contributing to multiplication of the population. See, when you are born human, the first and foremost responsibility you have as a human is to leave your offspring. That is your primary responsibility. The moment you are born as a human, your first responsibility is leave progeny, give rise to progeny. That is also the reason why I ask the aspirants of UPSC to first get married, then write the exam. Because your first duty as a human has to be finished. And secondly, there is an unnecessary puzzle and surprise with which you are living. Thinking that there is something very interesting on the other side of the coast. You are inquisitively waiting for it, wasting your time. Once you finish the ordeal, you understand that there is nothing encouraging there. And you remember the alarm thing. Once the alarm rings, you will focus on the things that are more vital. So the expectation here is not simply, of course, you would be giving you one definition and then you will talk about utility. In most of the questions, sir, we recommend the students to give pictures, graphs. The other day, a student was asking, what is it that, suppose a biological concept is asked, what kind of pictures you ask us to write in the exam? More or less, we are sticking to one conservative estimate of time when the fertility decreases and when finally menopause occurs. You're not drawing anything as of now because the topic I'm not discussing. I'm only trying to give you వేసేసుకుంటున్నారు బొమ్మలు. ఈ ఫస్ట్ బొమ్మ కూడా వేసారా? ఇది అది వేయకపోతే ఫస్ట్ అక్కడి నుంచి స్టార్ట్ చేసుకుని తర్వాత ఈ బొమ్మ వేసుకుని అప్పుడు ఇది రాసుకోవాలి. Many times this will be one anthropological inquiry. Not simply in biology cases, even in the sociological things also. Suppose a question like, is family universal comes. Is family universal? It is not simply universality among the humans. Does family exist in the non-humans also? What is family? Structured way of living. Structured. और बताइए, what is family? Mother, father, children. Okay. My son says that. Grow up. ఎదగాలంటే ఆ డైరెక్షన్లో కాదు. A closest kin group and social and traditional organization between. Who is there in your family? Sisters and your family. On what basis are you able to say that? ఏది లివై స్ట్రాసా? On what basis you know who is there in your family? So blood relation in the sense that primary kins form part of. Okay, when I'm asking you once again, who is there in your family? You all live together? They're there in Hyderabad with you? Okay. One of the primary things to define a family is you should live together. Living together is a primary responsibility along with sharing of the responsibilities, division of labor. Blood relations and all are fine, but not all blood relatives would be living together. Maybe the members of the primary family, primary kinship group, sharing the responsibilities and living together Now, that is the primary definition of family. So based on this, living together and division of labor, these are the two primary concerns there. Can they be extended to the non-humans also? So they also have family. That is how universality of family is examined, not simply in the humans, but the non-humans also. Coming here, menarche and menopause. So these are the anthropological inquiries. Whether these phenomena are unique to humans. Is there anything involved there? I'll give you one picture there. Look at this. When somebody was asking me what kind of graphs you should give, these are the kind of pictures that we expect. See, we are dealing with one topic, menarche and menopause. What is it that you can and should be writing in your exam? We said the definition, how important these are, and then things like, are they unique to humans? Do the far-off cousins of us also have this kind of a situation? What is unique to humans is, see that, the whole lot of time that you live post-reproductive. Maybe it is indicating that humans live not simply to reproduce. There are other tasks also. Somewhere in the mid of the lifespan, one is approaching menopause. So almost half of the life is left out after that. If at all I am going by the typical Hindu way of looking at things, your life has to be of 100 years. By 50 you are approaching menopause. 50 more years you will have to live. It is also sociologically important because post-menopausal life is something that is ridden by several other sets of biological issues, health concerns. So at a sociological level, this becomes an economic issue also. It doesn't end there. The whole lot of anthropological researches dealt with things such as what are the caste-wise differences in menarche and menopause, what are the tribe-wise differences, comparison between tribes and castes, comparisons between urban and rural populations, or comparisons based on geographical location in which the people are inhabiting. Are you following what I'm saying? So you are not actually writing the whole lot of biology behind the issue. There is a completely different set of information the examiner wants you to write about. And now the immediate question that might occur is, which textbook? Unfortunately, the Indian textbooks that we read, we don't have much of the research information that is incorporated. That is the reason why what we do is we depend on a lot of journal extracts. From there we would be, I'll love to talk about this. Andhra University has been doing incredible amount of work on physical anthropology. There are a couple of women anthropologists there who have worked on populations like Kshatriyas versus scheduled castes, whether there is a difference between menarche and menopause in the Kshatriyas and those from the Dalit communities. And there are papers presented comparing tribes with the Brahmin communities. So what is happening there is, they are trying to confirm whether there is an element of social hierarchy that can be extended to biological factors also. Very interesting conclusions were brought out by them. And these are the very recent studies actually, the studies of 2000, 1995, etc., relatively recent ones. There was one statement I was reading, I thought I would share with you. You don't write, you just read it. That was from the World Bank. About 1/3 of the total disease burden among the women aged 15 to 44 years in the developing countries is linked to the health problems arising out of pregnancy, childbirth, abortion, reproductive tract infections. And women suffer from the reproductive morbidity due to their culture of silence. I, in fact, wanted to bring this to you on this weekend because we are living in a conservative society. There is a reluctance to discuss things. I'm bringing my own very personal experience with you. See, there is this puzzle. There is this puzzle. When is the right time to talk about sex with the children? When is the right time to start giving sex education to the children? What had happened just a week ago at my place? TV was on and an advertisement of sanitary pads was coming. And my little fellow was asking. I was there, my husband was there, maids were there. And my son looks at me and asks, "Mummy, kabhi bade log bhi diaper pehante hain?" And I didn't know what to say because living in a conservative society, this was the first experience because we were actually thinking that maybe next month when we go to the pediatrician, we will start talking about it because he's already started talking about kissing and things like that. So how is it that I should introduce things to him? That was the thing that I wanted to talk to my pediatrician. Now, even before I could go there, he had asked this question. I was quiet. I was trying to, divert him. Immediately, my husband says, "This is not the way you handle things. This is not the way you handle things." Then he said, "Nahi beta, the girls actually do that." Then he said, "Acha, theek hai." And there are no further questions after that. So my husband says that, no, if at all you are trying to maintain the silence at this stage, he is going to be puzzled with this, and then there is an unnecessary inquiry into which maybe that it is better. That's where now the talk comes. We will have to train the children maybe right from 3 years or 4 years of age. What is a good touch? What is a bad touch kind of a thing? I think the time has come when the child actually is exposed to such kind of things. So that's where is the culture of silence. Don't get me wrong, because I think we are all adults. We have to talk these things. This is what is a cultural aspect we will have to look at. So reluctance to discuss those kind of things. So basically, we are going to talk about all those things in our future classes. I think 2 major questions I discussed today. One is mutation, what you are supposed to write. We don't know what mutation is, but we know what has to be the answer. And second thing is menarche and menopause. Any such kind of culture-ridden question comes. So anyway, in the class, I'm going to give you the statistics also. At what age one particular set of population must have experienced onset of menarche? What are the factors that might be influencing menarche? Is it that economics are involved, food is involved, climate is involved, several other things? When people from the lower strata suddenly, because of a certain economic gains, occupational shifts, etc., if they are moving to the upper strata, is there a visible change in this biological phenomena occurring? These are the things at which I am leaving. I will see you on Tuesday. Have a good time, sir.